Hey, thanks for joining me today. My name is Susan. I'm a psychic and a medium. Um, and what we're going to be doing today is a new series called Real Life Conversations with a Medium. I know a lot of you have questions out there about how do I connect? What is it like? Can I ask questions? How do I get answers? I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of questions around this because there's not a lot of information out there about it. So I'll start off by saying that I could always sense energies and spirits and presences from when I was a little girl. Um, my family sort of kind of believed in ghosts, but my dad would often make fun of us. And so it ended up being that whenever us rowdy kids broke a lamp in the living room, we blamed it on the ghost. And as you might imagine, that didn't go over very well. So basically, I had to stop blaming things on the ghost. Even though 99% of it was me, there were a few things here and there that were definitely not me. Even my dad had an experience where he felt someone in the bed with him. And he told us all about it, but he really couldn't explain it. And he never really talked about it again. So obviously, our house was pretty popular for ghosts. So I don't know if that's because, they knew I was there and they were trying to talk to me, or if the house, had ghosts in it before we moved in and they were the resident ghost. Who knows? But that leads me to another point, which is yes, ghosts are real and they really like to talk to you, especially if they know you can hear them and see them. They want to communicate to us. The reason they're ghosts is because they have, well, obviously they didn't cross over when they passed. They chose not to cross over to the other side. There's a few reasons for that. Generally speaking, it's because they had some kind of trauma that they could not overcome. They didn't want to overcome. A lot of times they don't think they're dead, swear to God. But sometimes it's because there's people on the other side that they don't really particularly want to meet again. I have done many readings where, or I should say, it's almost like a ghost intervention where there's a ghost. One of my clients has a ghost problem, or I'm in a hotel, and a historic hotel, and there's a ghost. And I've trained myself to try not to interact with them for the most part. But if a client has a problem, or if a particular spirit gets my attention, sometimes I'll work with them and I can help them cross over. How we do that is we find out why they're not crossed over. So sometimes, like I said, they don't think they're dead. Number two, they don't really want to leave the house. This is the house that they've known and they feel safe in this house and they want to stay there. Number three, they do not want to go to the other side because they may have been abused by a parent or a sibling who is over there. And the people that typically come get you when you cross over are your family members. So they don't want to go there. They don't feel safe to go and meet those people. They are safe, let me say that. They are safe in doing so, but they don't feel like it. So in the past, I've been able to go and say, okay, let me call someone else to meet you. A really interesting story that happened was this young boy appeared, and he didn't want to cross over, and he needed to cross over because he was causing problems in the house he was living in. The owners of that house came to me and they needed help because they were having some real problems with their pets and some other things. And so this young man needed to cross over. And when I talked to him, he wasn't particularly ready to cross over, or he didn't feel the need to cross over. He thought he was perfectly fine. He thought what he was doing in the house was perfectly fine. He had reasons for all of it. It dovetailed completely with the experience that the owners were having. It all made sense, but he needed to move on. So when I went into his energy, I saw the story of him living in a very small, rural, kind of a farm, if you will, a farmhouse. I don't see any crops or anything. It's basically just green space that just goes on, which leads me to believe it is not a farm, right? But it's a farmhouse in a rural area. So his father was the sheriff of the town, and he was the only child, and his father was very abusive to him, very abusive. And being the sheriff and being the son of the sheriff, I mean, there's no help there, right? No one in town was going to help him. But he did have his best friend lived, a while, but maybe a mile away or something. And he would go stay with his best friend sometimes and be able to escape. He would be able to live with his best friend and his best friend's family. And his best friend's mother was very kind to him. She was very motherly to him. And there were stretches of time of say 2 or 3 days where he could actually live with them and kind of escape, if you will, his life with his abusive father, especially in the summer and times when he wasn't needed at the house, or wasn't going to school. And so what I was able to do was ask this young man's best friend to come over and meet with him. And a cute aside to this story is, it turns out that the young man who had the abusive father had a crush on the friend's sister. So when he would go over there, he actually had a crush on the friend's sister, and there was another reason why it was a great house to go visit. But so anyway, he was asking about the sister, and his friend was like, "Look, we got to get this done. I can tell you all about this later, but you have to come with me now." There, we open the veil, and it's not like it can stay open for an hour, and you guys can have a conversation. It really is an effort for these people to open the veil after the period of time when they should have crossed over. So basically they're opening the veil in a new way, right? It's a new opening. So this young man was nice enough to come and open the veil, and finally the young man that was sort of the problem, if you will, for my client joined him and crossed over. But it was great because when they first opened the veil and were talking to each other, it was just so amazing. They were so happy to see each other, really almost like brothers, like the brothers that each of them never had, because the other kid just had a sister, and of course this young man just had himself. He was an only child, but in an abusive situation. So when they opened the veil and they came together, I could see that part of it, and it was really amazing and heartwarming. Great end to that situation. So that young gentleman crossed over, and the problems in the house disappeared. The behavior, the very strange behavior that the dogs have, disappeared. The very strange things that were happening in the house disappeared. It all stopped. So ghosts have an impact on our daily lives. They can, of course, you probably know this, but they can turn the lights on and off. They can make noises happen, like shattering glass when nothing broke. They can make doors open and close. They can, but the most important thing, I think, and the thing that they do most commonly, is they affect the energy of the house. It takes quite a bit of energy for a ghost to open a door or to make something fall off of a shelf. That's not your typical ghost. Your typical ghost is typically, they just want to be by themselves. Actually, they just want to be left alone. When your family's up and about, they're not up and about with you. They're hiding someplace. And that's kind of like why at night they come out, because then they have the house to themselves and they can kind of wander around, do whatever they want to do. But the main thing that they can do that is an impact on you and your family is they can impact the energy in your house. They can cause the energy in your house to become sad or angry. They bring their energy to your house. Depending on how much energy they have as a ghost, as a spirit, is how much energy they're going to put forth in affecting your house. So if you have a spirit that's just hanging out in a bathroom or in a closet or in the attic, and they may not be affecting you much at all, and you may never know they're there, and that's all well and good. But you may have one that is really agitated and wants someone to help them. This is a common thing. They feel like they've been wronged. Let's say they've been murdered. They want you to help them find their, murderer. Or let's say they've lost someone and they still are missing that person. They want you to help them go find that person. Now, this person might have died in 1956, and it's 2020, year 2020, and they're coming to me and saying, you have to help me find my sister. She disappeared, and I've never seen her again, and then I find out it's from 1956. Well, I can't help you find your sister from 1956. Your sister from 1956 has probably crossed over, and I can help you find her in that case. We can fix that. But if you don't know how to talk to spirits, or you don't have the ability to talk to spirits, it can be a problem, because that person, that energy, that spirit, can have such a strong energy that they actually impact the energy of the family members in the house. Again, by making you feel uneasy, or making you feel sad, or making you feel angry. So those are problems, and that's when that energy needs to be dealt with in some way. They can be, it's really hard to get them to move out of your house, because they're in your house because they like it. Number one. Number two, they get some energy off of you. Their energy feeds off of your energy. So that's why you're not going to find typically a lot of ghosts hanging out in the backyard, or let's say in a field somewhere. They're typically around people, because that's where they get their energy. So that's what I have to say about ghosts. I'm sure that you guys will have a lot of questions about that. Like I said, they're not all bad. They're not all good. They just need some help getting to where they need to go. So there's ghosts. They're lower vibration energies, and then of course our loved ones that have crossed over are not ghosts, right? They've crossed over, and they are in heaven, or whatever religious affiliation you have that that your dead go to. That's where they're at. And the interesting thing about them, and I don't want this video to go too long, is that they keep their personality on the other side. So if your dad has crossed over and he is a happy guy and a jokester, well, my dad has crossed over and he's a happy guy and he's a jokester, loves playing jokes, loves playing tricks on people. When he crossed, the first thing he did was play a trick on me. And I knew it was him. I still didn't think it was funny. That's pretty much our relationship. He loved to play jokes on me because I'm very earnest and I fall for them. So I was the perfect person, the perfect child of all of us, for him to play his jokes on. But he knew I would get it, and he knew that that would tell me that he was okay. You know, he's on the other side and he's still playing jokes on people. He's perfectly fine. My dad is also very frugal. I mean, the most frugal person I've ever met. Um, and so, another thing that he did for me, I was looking to buy a house. And of course, the house that I wanted to buy was, you know, it wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap. It was a middle range house. I had big plans for it. I really had already in my mind just built this entire lifestyle around this house. But you know, the deal kept falling through for one thing or another. There was problems with the city, the problems with the permits, problems with things that I wanted to do with the house, so it didn't make sense for me to buy it if I couldn't do these things. In the middle of all of this, another house pops up that's half the price. And of course, it doesn't have the yard size that I want, and it doesn't have this, and it doesn't have that, but it's so inexpensive. And I thought, well, that's a really cute little house, but it's just a little too small, and the yard's too small, and I just don't think it's going to work for me. I just, you know, even though it's a really good buy, I just don't think it's going to work for me. Went to bed that night, had a dream, saw my dad's truck pulling into the garage and parking. And not only just pulling into the garage and parking, but the garage door closing. Like, he's home, he's ready to walk in the house. This is his house. This is of the inexpensive house, of course. So then I woke up and I thought, geez, my dad is saying I really should take another look at this. This is my dad's pick. This is the house he thinks I should get. So I went back and looked at it, and I thought, my God, I'd be an idiot not to buy this house. It's like a steal. It's literally like, it's one of those unbelievable things that you tell people about, and they go, no, you didn't get that house for that price. I'm like, yes, I did, because of my dad. Absolutely, because of my dad. He came through. He's like, no, look at this house. You don't need this house over here. You're gonna max out your budget. This way you can buy this house and you can spend money making it just the way you want and still have money left over. That was my dad. So your loved ones have their same personality when they cross over, and they want to help you. Now, of course, this could backfire. So if your dad was a gambler and a risk taker, and conversely, he may give you some advice that may not work out, because for some people risk is fine, so you do have to take that into consideration. I did a reading yesterday where the dad came through for his son, his adult son, and his dad gave him some advice, and his son says, gosh, I don't really want to do that. and And I said, well, remember that this is his opinion. He's coming through with the same opinions that he would have had when he was here with you on earth. And if you don't want to do it and you disagree with that, then no problem. It's the same thing. If your dad gave you advice when he was here and you thought, gee, Dad, that's great, I can see how that would work for you, but it really doesn't fit me. It doesn't work for me. So I'm going to have to do something different. It's the same thing. So even though they're coming across from the other side with this advice, sometimes you have to remember that it may not be the advice you need to follow. If your mom was better with money and your dad wasn't, then maybe you need to ask your mom the money question. If your dad was better at fixing the house and fixing cars, or maybe he was better at money, whatever, that would be who you would ask. You would go to your dad and say, hey, I have this question about these things because I value your advice in these areas. And conversely, you don't want to take advice from somebody that maybe that's not their strong suit. There was something else I was going to tell you about that. Let's see, something else important about that. Yes, sorry about that. Yep, my guides were just coming in to help me with that. So when I'm giving a reading and I'm getting advice from your whoever it is that's come through to read for you, it may be your grandmother, it may be your grandfather, it might be a friend that you had that crossed over. Whoever it is from the other side that's coming through and wants to talk to you and wants to give you some advice about something. The sometimes if we don't, let's say we want a second opinion. Let's say that's the case. Let's say in this case yesterday, this gentleman's dad came through and he said, "Gosh, I don't. That doesn't really fit me. It fits exactly him, and that's what he would do. But it's not really fit. It doesn't really fit me." So in that case, what happened is his guides, my client's guides, came through. His spirit guides. The energy is completely different. It's bigger energy. It's like it's like a big football player walking into the room who's like 6'5" and 280 pounds, and it's a big energy, right? I mean, that's a big presence that walks in. And his guides actually gave him a little bit different advice and explained to him why taking these steps would help him. And so in that case, he got to speak to his dad, but he also got different advice from his guides. His guides, or your guides, are like your coach. They're like focused completely on you. They're not focused on anybody else. They are only focused on you and on your best path forward. So they're going to give you the advice that you need. So sometimes it's also good to get the same question answered by your guides and also by a trusted family member that you have. I'll reverse that for you as well and tell you sometimes your guides won't tell you things because you're supposed to learn a lesson. So, or they may tell you half of it. That's particularly frustrating. So they tell you half of the story, and I'm thinking, that only takes this person this far. How come I'm not getting information that takes them all the way down this line? Well, there's obviously something coming that's going to be a bit of a lesson for them, and they don't want to tell us sometimes about our lessons because then we tend to try to avoid them. And that's good for us, but in their worldview, the best thing for us to do is to learn our lessons, is to grow. So if I find myself in a situation where a guide isn't really giving me the whole scoop, sometimes I will go to a relative that's crossed over and see if they can give me a different viewpoint, because sometimes they can see, especially if it's within the next, say, year, they can see what's coming down the pike and they can say, oh yeah, well that's because they're actually going to get pregnant. They think that they're done with their family, but what's happening is that there's another baby on the way, and if they know about the baby coming, they will decide not to go back to school. So then you can see how your guides are like, well, we don't really want to tell her about that because we really want her to go back to school. It's really important and she's going to be able to do it and it's not going to be a problem. So we're just not going to tell her. But, then mom comes through and says, well, honey, you're going to have another baby while you're in school. You know what I mean? And so that's happened too. So sometimes I will kind of go around the guides and try to get the information from a family member. It seems complicated, doesn't it? But it's really not. It's just a matter of I'm trying to help my clients get the best information and the most information that they can to help them live their life in the highest path for them. So I kind of do whatever I need to do to get that information to them. Wow, this has been a lot, and I just sat down to talk for a second. So I'm going to continue these conversations. I hope that you'll join me again in the future. And please write down any questions you have. I will try to find them and answer them for you. I'm really interested to know what you guys want to know about, what questions you guys have. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And I hope everybody is doing well, and hopefully we'll see each other again soon. Take care.